everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for The Suicide Squad. This is, of course, like over a week late at this point, but I wanted to do this review because the movie was entertaining and I wanted to talk about it. As you can see, we have Catwoman here. That's like the only figure I realize I actually have for anything DC based is this. And I do have the Batman Beyond Batmobile, and that's about it. But love the movie. I thought it was really entertaining. I'll get into spoilers. Of course, there will be spoilers as the title says, and I will let you guys know when we get to that. They will be in the second half. But just to kick things off, I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. I like what they did for the most part. There's definitely some stuff which I'll have to talk about in spoilers that I will definitely say I'm disappointed that this very specific thing happened, but it was fun to watch. Like, it was definitely rated R. Like, it was, I don't know what the first one was, but it had to be PG-13 because they didn't do nearly enough for it to count as being rated R. But it was really gory. Like, I was like, okay, I didn't bother to check like, oh, what's the rating on this movie, but it was clearly like fairly early on. You're like, I think this is rated R. I think it's rated R. So they don't kind of skimp on the violence in this one, which I appreciate. The comedy I actually thought was way better than the first movie. I definitely think they did a good job with that. I like the characters. I like for the most part, I pretty much like the story. Like, there wasn't much to oddly enough. I think the story for this one does kind of compare a little bit to the first one as well. Like, where it's kind of like, they're technically going on a mission, but it also just feels like as they go on this mission, it feels like so little is actually involved in the original mission that they're going on that it's kind of like, I don't know what their mission is. Like, as they go through, it's more about the characters, which is really always the case when it comes to the Suicide Squad. Like, even if you read the comics, it's like, depending on what they're doing, typically it's just, here's the Suicide Squad, let's kill off some character that nobody actually cares about, or here's a character that isn't even popular right now. Look at them, they died. We'll bring them back in the next multiverse, which, 5 years from now or whatever. You know how the comics are. And so, that's typically the Suicide Squad. Like, you have entertaining characters come together, but ultimately, it's kind of like, what's the mission again? And that's pretty much the point of the Suicide Squad. So in a sense, it works. But when you watch it, it's kind of just like, oh yeah, like they're always sent on an actual mission. But then it's just like, I don't remember what the mission was. It's never actually that important. And I feel like in the first one, it was technically more important, even though it was a much stupider mission and it made no sense when they got there, because it's like, so she formed the Suicide Squad to help save her, even though she already had an army of people that were actually like military trained people that it was weird. Like, some weird stuff happened in that movie. It doesn't make sense. But this one, it was at least way more entertaining. And I was like, okay, you kind of go through it. You have characters that are really funny. Of course, King Shark, I would definitely say was my favorite in the whole movie. I think that's most people, where it's like, King Shark was just super funny. Like, just the way he would speak. There's some moments, like some of the dialogue they gave him and just the moments that they had. Like, there's a scene of him on the bus that was the funniest thing ever to me. That was just really good. So that was really funny. Like, King Shark is just hilarious. So I hope we get to see more of that. If they go into a sequel or whatever they do with King Shark, I'm like, I hope King Shark just like lives forever. But I like what they did with the movie ultimately, and I think I'll check it out again. I do want to watch it again just to kind of get some more details and stuff like that. But it was fun. All in all, it was pretty fun, and I would recommend seeing it. I mean, if you saw the first one, you kind of just owe it to yourself to at least have like a good Suicide Squad experience. It's like just to make up for that last one. So I'd recommend it, even if you hadn't seen the first one. This is a good one. It's definitely really bloody and over the top and just ridiculous, but I still enjoyed it ultimately. And I was like, okay, like they definitely did some stuff that I found entertaining, and we'll see what they end up doing going forward. But that, I would say, is about it for the non-spoiler segment. So if you have not seen the movie and you don't want spoilers, you should go see the movie. It's still on HBO Max. I think you still got like another week or two, probably even 3. So I say definitely go check it out, and then you can come back and check out the spoilers. But getting directly into spoilers, obviously we're going to start at the beginning of the movie, which you rarely do. You can rarely start at the very beginning of the film and be like, spoiler warning. But here we go. Everybody dies in the beginning except for Harley and Rick Flag. That's it. Everybody gets killed off. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. It's an interesting choice, and I know that the whole point of that was like, oh crap, look at this. Like, everyone dies, you don't know who's gonna live. And I'll admit, I was still surprised. Like, as they went through the movie, they still killed some people that I wasn't expecting. Specifically, Rick Flag. I was super upset about that one. Like, oddly enough, the 2 deaths in the whole movie that I hated the most were the two characters that were in the last movie. They killed off Boomerang, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm legitimately pissed about that one, because I'm like, Captain Boomerang was great in the first movie. Like, I know a lot of people like Harley Quinn or whatever. I don't care. Like, even now, I'll be honest. She's been in 3 movies. I like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. I think they do some decent stuff with her. I still don't care that much about Harley Quinn as far as like the live action stuff. I'm like, she's entertaining to watch, but I still feel like I haven't gotten just like that thing that I need for it to just be like, holy crap, Harley Quinn. I just feel like I haven't gotten that, which is really weird. Technically it was the Birds of Prey, which is super stupid. It still should have just been Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey. I don't know what idiot was like, we're gonna call it Birds of Prey, as if anybody cares. And then the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. It's a silly full name, and I know that's why they did it, because it's Harley Quinn and it's silly. Just call it Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, but that's beside the point. Still upset. They killed Captain Boomerang. I thought he was going to be like one of the best. Even if they killed him later, I still would have been upset about it. But the fact that he just dies in the beginning, I'm like, this dude is hilarious. And I'm like, Captain Boomerang was great. Jai Courtney is great as Captain Boomerang. I hope they do some, multi-universe type crap and just bring him back later, because they really need to. Him and Rick Flag, I thought, like, it was just the thing. But I was like, we got him. He was already funny in the first one. We got James Gunn. Clearly he can write comedy. This should be great. He had laser boomerangs. I was hyped, okay? I was like, this dude has laser boomerang. He's got a lightsaber boomerang, which I don't know how we can cut through people, and then he catches it. It's a laser. I don't care. It's hilarious. It's so dumb. And I'm like, Captain Boomerang, here we go. And then Mongal jumps on the helicopter, and she starts flipping out, which I thought was funny that she screamed. But she flips out, thing hits all the boomerang, hits all the bamboo, and it explodes. And then they show Boomerang, and he backs up, and I'm like, maybe he can live. Like, I'm serious. When I was watching, I was like, maybe he's okay. Like, it was all in his face and everything. I'm like, he can do it though. And then it blows up behind him, and then he gets like chopped up, and the explosion hits him. And I'm like, they just killed Captain Boomerang. I was expecting 2 hours of comedy gold from this man, and they killed him in the beginning, and I was so upset. But I was just like, they killed him. I was legitimately upset when the movie started. I was just like, man. And like it actually affected me, because I was like, I wanted his character, especially considering the comedy that we got in this movie, where there were tons of, like, King Shark, he made me laugh a ton in this movie, and I was expecting some of that, like, just throw in Captain Boomerang as well. I was so happy. I was excited for that. I was just like, man, I know they're gonna kill a lot of people, and that was another thing, which I'll get to in a minute. But I was like, I know they're gonna kill a bunch of people. That's the point of the Suicide Squad, and everybody had their guesses, like, who's gonna live, who's gonna die. We all knew Pete Davidson was gonna die, which is really funny that they happened to kill him first, because they could have killed other people first. But it was funny, like, everyone was like, Pete Davidson is dead. Everyone knows that TDK is gonna die. It's like, Pete Davidson, he's gonna be out. Like, he's dying. He's the first person out. It's like, everyone's like, oh, TDK, huh? The detachable kid. Okay, he's gone. We knew that was gonna happen. But everyone else, it was like, people were suspecting, like, which oddly enough, the Weasel thing did end up playing out, because people were like, the Weasel might be that trick thing where he lives. A lot of people thought Polka Dot Man might live as well, which kind of sucked that he died too. I was like, oh, that sucks that he gets killed off at the end. But it was one of those things, like, okay, it wasn't much of a twist, oddly enough. Like, him going through, as soon as they showed that camera angle, I was like, oh, he's dead. Like, that's, like, there's some camera angles where I'm watching TV, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's the death camera angle. It's like when people are fighting, and then it's like, that person was, like, knocked out, but they weren't killed, and then the two people have a conversation, and then they show, like, that quarter angle. I'm like, oh, this is, like, they're gonna get stabbed in the back. Like, there are certain angles that people use, and you can see it. Like, I guarantee, if you watch that scene where Polka Dot Man dies, watch other stuff where people die by giant things, and you'll see it's the exact same shot. So they always do those specific shots, and as soon as he was like, I'm a superhero, I'm a fucking superhero, I was like, oh, he's dead right here. As soon as they showed it, I was like, he's about to die, he's gonna get crushed. And then he got crushed, and I was like, death angle. So sometimes but I was like, it sucks, because I liked his character. He was really funny, and him seeing his mom all the time was hilarious. But then killing everyone in the very beginning actually made me a little bit disappointed in the movie, because I was like, oh, I was hoping for like nearly 24 characters on like this really grandiose mission, and then especially because the movie is actually 2 hours long. And I'll be honest, I mean, they actually do it in this movie where they spend a lot of time kind of talking about the characters, and they all get like little moments for their backstory, which I always felt kind of took me out of the movie just a little bit, because I was like, I kind of don't care, honestly. And so it just felt weird that everyone kind of had these moments where they would like stop, and then they would give their backstory and stuff. Like, in some points it worked, and then in other parts I was like, I feel like this, even though they asked like a genuine question where I'm like, I could see someone being curious, it just felt like it came out of nowhere. And then it would kind of stop and be like, this is my backstory. And they kind of do that as they kind of go throughout the film. And I was like, some parts work better than others. And then other ones I was just like, I didn't really appreciate it as much. But them killing everybody in the beginning, kind of disappointed me, not just because of course they kill Captain Boomerang, which is the original sin of this of this film. But I was hoping that we would have characters just go throughout, like have about a dozen characters go through, and then as the movie continues on, it's a nearly 2 hour film, they get picked off and you don't know who lived. Like they literally could have had half the people get killed and you still have a decent chunk of people left alive. And that's kind of how I thought things were gonna. I figured it wouldn't even be half the people would live. I thought they would do more than half the people would die. But as it was going on, I was like, that's at least, in my head, I was like, okay, they have like a buttload of people. We know Pete Davidson is gonna die. We know TDK is gonna go out. People fear, Polka Dot Man and stuff. And it's like you have a buttload of characters. And then they, as the mission goes on, they start dropping off here and there. And then they killed everybody off in the beginning. And I was like, oh, this isn't going to be like as exciting as I thought, where you really have to guess like, oh, who's going to live and who's going to die. Because when you do it in the beginning, it's like the shock value of being like, we could kill everybody. You never know. But then it kind of lessens the impact because it's like, well, once you get to like the next 5 people, like you're not going to kill them in the next 3 minutes. When you have like nearly 24 people, you could kill somebody like every 10 minutes. Like, you pretty much could. You could kill someone, like, every 10 minutes. And I'm like, I don't really know who's going to live, who's going to die. You could kill 2 people off at once, all sorts of stuff. And I was like, there's so many possibilities. And it was like, everyone's dead except for Rick Flag and Harley Quinn. And then here's 5 other people. And I'm like, it's not going to be... Like, I was hoping for, like, a bit of suspense. Like, who's really going to live? Who's really going to die? I'm like Mangal. I knew she had super strength. So I was like, okay, she seems like the type of character that could live. But there's no suspense. It's like everyone died, and then it's just like, oh, well, I don't get to guess anymore. Like there's only 5 people, they're not gonna die, and they still do. But it's like it all happened. It all ends up going down towards the end there, which was still entertaining. I didn't think they would kill Rick Flag, and I'll tell you for sure, just like the killing off Captain Boomerang, and I was like, him dying. I was legit just like, this sucks. I hate Peacemaker. Like, as soon as that happened, I was just like, I hate this. I hate how I feel right now is disgust. I hate Peacemaker. I'm gonna watch the show. I'm sure it'll be funny, but I'm gonna just be hurt. I'm just like, dang. I like Rick Flag. He's just like he's the grounded center, which actually works for his character. Like even in the first movie, that was him. Like he's around all these crazy people. Honestly, I would have loved it. No joke. Even if they had done this for a couple of movies where it was like Rick Flag, Harley Quinn, and Captain Boomerang were like the 3 people that always made it out, that actually would have been kind of cool. I think they could have done something with that where like they just always end up surviving, and they could be like this kind of the heart, of the film. And I thought that would have been cool because they all have different roles. Like, Harley is like crazy. Jack Courtney is like the douchebag crazy and he's funny. And then Rick Flag is like that. He's the straight man to all like the crazy people around him. But even in this movie, he's respected. Like they have Bloodsport, great costume by the way. Very reminded me a lot of Dead Space, like all the gold around him. But they respect each other. Peacemaker technically respects him. Like they're the 3 kind of army dudes. They do like that one hit kill move and stuff, and they get out of the truck and it's all like these are like the 3 badasses and stuff. So I like how they kind of played with his story. Like even these people who are technically the bad guys are like, Rick Flag is a cool dude. Like they understood him, and like they even reference at the end after he's gone. Harley, she's like, I miss him. He was my friend. And then Bloodsport is like, he was my friend too. Like they cared about him, and even Peacemaker is like, because he's crazy, he's like, even this piece is worth the life of anyone, including a hero like you. Like he even calls him like a hero. Like he doesn't want to do this, but he's also the dude that has to do it, which is why he was on that mission, by the way. Which great joke where it's like, everything that she said about Bloodsport was the same for Peacemaker. The reason he was on that mission was the super secret double mission, and he would follow orders compared to Bloodsport, who has an effing heart. Peacemaker is just this crazy dude who's like, everything that the government says is for peace, and I'll kill every man, woman, and child for peace. Funny lines, but then it gets down to it, and it's like he does a very horrible thing for no good reason. Like, yes, there'd be some very serious issues if that was outed by the government. The U.S. government was outed for being like, hey, these astronauts who are really stupid were like, let's capture this thing floating, this big starfish floating in space, and then that went bad. So would have been some issues there. I know why Amanda Waller would not want that, and that's of course why she lets everybody go free at the end where Bloodsport's like, yeah, this is on the server, you just let us go, it doesn't have to see the light of day. And she's like, cool, deal. And I'm sure she was super pissed, which clearly she was. Like, when that woman hit her in the back of the head, everyone was like, oh, what do we do now? But I like the way all that stuff was handled. But it sucked to see Rick Flag go. I do wish that we got to see more people live throughout the film where it wasn't like they killed everyone in the beginning. Although the Weasel death, or death, I should say, that was really good. Like, he just jumps down and then he's just drowning. And it's like, that's a funny way to start it. And it was just like, and there goes Weasel. And it was a really hilarious way to start it. And it was just like, okay, this is really silly. But I thought what they were gonna do was they were gonna kill off, like, I forget, Weasel dies. You know, Pete Davidson. I do not remember his character's name. So Pete Davidson dies, and then TDK. I was like, they're definitely gonna kill them off. They might kill somebody else as well. I thought they were gonna lose the first mission and then kind of just lose all contact with them, and then the second team would go in, and then we would just find random characters as they kind of went throughout. Like they would kind of get spread out or whatever, and then they would find them as the second team went in. They'd be like, okay, here you go. And then they would kind of pick people up like, oh, this person actually lived. And then, they might die later, but it would be like, this person lived through that first mission and we don't know who lived or who died. And that's just like one of the little things where I was like, I was really hoping for like, I said suspense earlier, but I guess I can't count it as suspense. But in a sense, yeah, like there's a little bit of suspense, like who will live, who will die. Depending on how well they, wrote the characters, I might care about, some people living more than others. But that was just one of the things I was hoping for. And then with everyone dying in the beginning, that was my big disappointment. It didn't like ruin the film in any way. Like I still really enjoyed it. But when I saw that first part and everyone died, I was just like, man, I was really hoping for a movie where like a lot of people die off. Because honestly, aside from the fact that they did end up killing Rick Flag and they kill Polka Dot Man at the end of the movie, that's still only, considering when you kill everyone in the beginning, they barely count. It was just like a joke thing where it's like, oh, we killed everybody. But they really only killed 2 of the 5 main characters. Like, there were only 5 main characters in the movie. You have, or I guess technically it was like 6 or 7, because I'm already forgetting who was on the full team. So we have Bloodsport, Polka Dot Man, Peacemaker, Ratcatcher 2, King Shark, and then you have Harley Quinn and Rick Flag. And they only killed 2 of those characters, because Peacemaker does technically live. So they only killed off those 2 people. So they didn't really kill off that many main characters. When you really look at it in that way, they didn't actually kill anybody on the Suicide Squad. I was like, okay, 2 people died. But compared to what I was expecting the movie to be, like, oh, who lives and who dies, nothing happened. R.I.P. Milton, but, we didn't even know he was going to be in the movie. So it's just one of those things where I was like, it really took away from what I was hoping to see from, like, this is a Suicide Squad movie. And that just kind of sucks. I also just looked at my monitor. I was like, I'm wearing my Star Wars hat. I didn't realize that, which is funny. I was supposed to be wearing, where's my other hat? Boom. There you go. What does it matter? It's dead now. See, that's how it works. I like the movie. Like I said, I really enjoyed the movie, but it was one of those things where just because once they killed everyone in the beginning, I was like, dang, I was hoping to just be like, oh, this might work. This might not work. There were a bunch of things I was hoping for in this movie that just didn't happen because everyone died in the opening. But I still enjoyed it. I feel like I'm harping on that, but that was something I was really hyped for that. Like if you watch, what is it? Assault on Arkham. It's the Suicide Squad animated film. There are 2 of them. The Assault on Arkham one I think is better. But, it's kind of the same thing. Like, I think that was a much smaller team as well. But, some people live, some people die. And that's just kind of how it goes. But, oddly enough, now that I think about it, they killed the exact same amount of people in this movie as they did in the first movie. If you go, like, main characters, because I don't really count anybody on that first team anymore, because it was actually like a surprise joke moment where they killed everyone in the opening. And then it was like, oh, okay, so it's just the 5 people are the the main characters. So once they did that, they only killed Rick Flag, and then they killed Polka Dot Man. So they killed the same amount of people in the first Suicide Squad movie, one of which was the rope guy, Slipknot. Yeah, they killed him in the beginning, which he was the Pete Davidson of that movie. Everybody knew he was going to die. And then they killed Diablo at the end of that movie in the first one. So they killed the same amount of people. When you really think about it, as far as like actual main characters, they killed the exact same amount of people in this second movie compared to the first one. And then everyone else was just like a joke death, like including Mongal, who I legit thought was going to live at least a long time because she has super strength. Like that's the whole thing. That's why she grabbed the helicopter. She actually does have super strength, being based off of Mongol, of course. But it was just interesting. I was just like, oh, it was just kind of disappointing. But then the rest of the movie still worked for me. It was still super funny. Them going through the village, killing all the innocent people and stuff. And they're like kind of being stealthy, but they were supposed to be at first. And then it got to the point where they were doing that competition. And you could see it was just getting more and more ridiculous. And I forgot that, you don't even think about it after a certain point. Because they're just like shooting tables off of legs and dropping TVs in bathtubs and shooting dudes with their dicks out and stuff. And then it's like, oh, they're supposed to be doing stealth. I forgot about that. Like they have the scene with Bloodsport where he has like the little, like the mini mace or whatever. And he's like flipping it around. And then they turn the camera and it's just 3 dudes looking at him do this. And I'm like, that was like, I was watching with my girlfriend. She was like, so they were just standing there while he was doing that? I was like, yeah, they were. They were just standing there because they turned the camera and they're just staring at him as he's doing like this. I'm like, I don't know if that was on purpose or if that was just dumb, but I think it was meant to just be how stupid this moment is getting, where he's doing this, and then they just turn the camera and they're just watching him do it, and then he kills all three of them, and it's like, this is a dumb scene. Like, he literally sets two people on fire and they're screaming to death, and it's just like, this isn't stealth anymore. Like, this is chaos. They were killing everybody before anybody shot off any of their guns, apparently. Like, nobody actually had guns, which I thought was funny, because once they get through, it's like, these are the rebels and they saved my life, and it's like, oh, oops. And it's like, why didn't my people alert me? Your people don't even have guns. They can't alert each other when they're burning in flames. So I don't know how they were going to tell her anything. Like, Bloodsport set two people on fire and they were screaming. And there were still other people left to die. And I'm just like, I don't know how anyone could possibly not understand what's happening right now. They're being attacked. So, really fun. I mean, they literally had, like, the whole thing collapse outside, like, when Polka Dot Man took down, like, the tower and stuff. Like, nobody heard that collapse, and then they're just like, oh, yeah, like, why didn't anybody say anything? It's like, you didn't hear any of that going on? So, nobody was going to tell anybody anything anyway, because they just murdered everybody. But that was a really funny scene. And it was just, like, a part of it was just, like, that really weird, like, this doesn't make a lot of sense. They're just going through, and then it just gets crazier and crazier. But definitely funny. Harley Quinn being with the president and all that stuff. I didn't like the scene when she, like, proposed, because I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like, is she dreaming or is this really happening? I didn't like that moment. I was like, this just seems too weird to me, where it was just like her, like, with the birds and everything. And I was like, I honestly couldn't tell if that was actually even happening, if that was a real montage, or if that was her just being crazy, because I assumed that was her being silly. Like, they went through all that stuff in a day. And then I was like, I thought they was gonna just do the thing where it's like she's going through all these fantasy things, and then it would just be her standing there smiling the whole time. And then it was like, oh no, they actually did all of that. And I was like, huh, okay. I like, it would have been better to me if that was just a hallucination for her and she just made all that up in her head. But I was like, no, they actually did all of that, minus the birds, like, actually making her fly. But they did all that, and I was just like, this is one of those moments. It wasn't a backstory moment, but it was another one of those moments where I was just like, this seems like it just takes away from the movie. Like, it just seemed like super weird pacing, where she just went into this and then they had the music playing, and I was like, I don't get anything from this scene. It just felt weird to me. So that was definitely, like, the one moment in the whole movie where I was like, that whole scene, to me personally, could have just been taken right out. Like, I was just like, this just seems super weird. Like, they have the music playing and it's super laughing, and then it just gets faker and faker, and I'm like, I don't know if any of this is happening, but it all actually happened, with some slight embellishments, like, them watching the sunset and everything, and it was just dramatic, and it seemed like it lasted too long. I think that's what it really was. It seemed like that went on for way longer than it needed to me personally, but still enjoyed everything that happened with her character. She kills the dude, talks about all the dramatic stuff she went through, and I was like, well, that's a good scene. And then, of course, she actually has a really epic fight scene, which I appreciated, because she didn't even get that in the Birds of Prey movie. So I was like, oh, they're actually showing her effing fight, which she can do. So I did appreciate that. I was like, that's the most Harley Quinn moment we've ever actually gotten, because we actually got to see her fight for real, because she is a great fighter in the comics and everything. So I appreciated that for sure, and all the blood splatter being the flowers and stuff. That was a cool way to do it, and the flowers just being behind her. She's shooting the two guns and everything. Even when she finishes that and she's like, calling for the taxi, it's still like flowers and stuff behind her in the background. I was like, that's a cool way to do it. It could have just been empty, or it could have just been all the dead bodies just covered in blood, but they left it as like all these flowers and like fireworks, everything just being like silly in the background, and they left that there. And I was like, that's actually a really cool, just a simple little touch, because technically she already did it, and now she's in the real world, in a sense, but they kind of left that there because, like, that's what she assumes is behind her, is like all these flowers and everything being so pretty and silly. And I was like, that's a cool way to kind of do that. And she's just calling a taxi now, and just kind of like, all right, I'm done with that. But in the background is still flowers, falling to the ground. So I enjoyed that. And all in all, I still enjoyed the movie. Sucked to see, Rick Flag go. I was like, that sucks. I liked his character. I thought he could be good. Who knows? He might still have a girlfriend out there who'll be really mad in the third movie. Who knows what that'll mean. But I liked the movie overall. Starro I thought was interesting. They really spoiled that in the trailer. They really shouldn't have done that. It's literally the final boss, if you will. They shouldn't have spoiled that, because that's a really big deal. I know Starro was weird for most people. First villain of the Justice League, and that seems dumb, but Starro is a really important character. Like, Starro is serious. So I like the way they handled that. Super gross ending when she jumps through and stabs it with the spear, and all the rats are going in eating it. I'm like, these rats wouldn't be able to hold their breath that long, for one. So that was another ridiculous moment where they go in and they're swimming to eat this thing, and I'm like, they wouldn't be able to do that for that long. But it is what it is. It's just ridiculous. She's inside of an alien eyeball. Guess that had no effect on her body. Like, same composition, it's just liquid, it's no big deal. But that was super gross, like when it's like moving around and you can see like half of the liquid has come out of the eye. I was like, that is grossly realistic. And I just kind of like that moment. And then as it dies, it's like, I was happier just floating through space looking at the stars. And then it's sad and it dies. I'm like, cool way to do it. But all in all, it was a fun movie. Wish we got to see more people die throughout the film instead of everyone in the beginning, but that's just my thing. That's what I was hoping for. R.I.P. Captain Boomerang. That's just always going to be a loss, because I'm like, I was expecting some comedy gold from that man, and then he just died. I'm like, dang. They did have a good joke with Weasel, and once again, Pete Davidson being like, "Is this a werewolf? I don't do good with werewolves." He was really funny in the opening. Like, that whole scene with Weasel and them talking about that was really funny. Them trying to be like, "What type of dog is it?" And it's like, I bet it's this type of dog. It's like, you ever seen a dog that looks like that? Like, that whole conversation I thought was really funny. But enjoyed the whole movie. Love the comedy of it. I'll definitely check it out again before it's off of HBO Max. But we'd love to know your thoughts on it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. What you guys think of, as far as like the classic characters dying, Captain Boomerang and Rick Flag. I want to know what you guys thought about that, especially the Rick Flag one, because he actually was going through the movie. I'm sure everyone assumed like, oh, he's the leader type character. Of course he'll make it through. He's like the straight man to the story. He has to make it through. But the way they did it, that was a heck of a twist. It was very sad, and it was super effed up. Like, clearly Peacemaker has super strength, and like when he threw him and he just threw him into another room, I was like, I don't think he's gonna live. Like, as soon as he threw him, I was like, oh, he's dead. I think he's gonna die here. And it was just effed up. So it was sad to see it happen, because I'm like, oh, he might actually win. And I was thinking like the Peacemaker show, maybe it's a prequel. And then they showed the little thing, and I was like, it's not a prequel. And then he stabbed him in the heart. And they did a Mortal Kombat X-ray on him, because he had to jam it in, and it went into his heart, and we see his heart slow down. I'm like, you didn't have to do that to me. And the people that suddenly care, like, they made me care about Rick Flag. I was like, he's one of the 2 people left from the original movie, and I didn't hate him in the first one either. And I like him even more in this. And it's just like, dang, that blows. But good movie overall. Would love to know your thoughts on it. If we have a third one, who would you guys like to see come back? Who would you, like, I don't know. I guess that's all I can say. Who would you like to see come back? There's only a couple people. There's a lot of comic book characters. If you read comics, who would you like to see kind of get thrown into the Suicide Squad, I guess. But all in all, want to know your thoughts on this film. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.